Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Collaborative Approach in Education. This week's episode is called Changing the Narrative.
Well, I believe that every so often we hear from educators, teachers everywhere about how challenging children's behaviors have been. And as a workshop facilitator myself, I have been to different childcare centers around the coast and Brisbane, and I can see that definitely there is a lack of training out there, and I do believe that we need to change that narrative, that the children's behaviors are the problems. Children are a bit more challenging nowadays. They have no boundaries, and, the problems are all with the children. And definitely, like, we would like to invite everyone to just change the narrative and try to look through different lenses at
Yeah.
those behaviors. Um, it is important to know that um, when we look at children's behaviors, we are looking at it from our rational perspective, right? Because we are adults. We have our prefrontal cortex, this part of the brain that is responsible for our rationale, right? And then we have that part of the brain fully developed. Our children don't. So they actually react. Their emotional response come from their amygdala, which is like responsible for to respond. It's the part of your brain that is used to when you see a fire, and then you
Fight or flight.
like like is that fight
Fight or
exactly
flight. Yeah.
the fight or flight feeling, where it's like if there's a fire in your kitchen, you're not gonna think about how you need to go and get a jumper because it's a bit cold outside, or you need to get your passport because you never know, or whatever. You're gonna run outside because you need to keep yourself safe. The children, they respond with amygdala. So any emotional response they have, they don't have a filter of that rationale. Like this is not, the right behavior for this moment. They respond how they're feeling. So they're feeling overwhelmed, they're gonna let you know about this.
And I think a lot of educators need to understand that the child's not purposely trying to annoy you. They are just working out of that
Yeah.
part of their brain. And it's not like they've come in that morning and like, you know what, I'm really going to annoy Miss Danny today
Yeah.
by doing this. Like it's like, they don't set out to do that. It's just that their brain is not developed
Yes,
enough.
exactly. And I think that when you change the narrative to like, I'm the one with a mature brain in this relationship, like I am the one that has control over my actions. So I can control the way I react to this situation. It will make it easier for you to deal with that situation, right? Because it's they're not choosing to do that on purpose. It's exhausting to be crying and pushing the boundaries all day. They are trying to connect. And I say this quote all the time, and I don't know who wrote it, but I feel like this is my mantra, and I get all my teachers, all my team to have the same mantra. That is like the child that needs your love the most is going to ask in the most inappropriate ways.
I love that.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah, and I feel like that also helps me. It grounds me every time I'm losing my patient, because we are all humans, right? I'm a mom too. I teach a group of 24 kindy children in my classroom. We do go through those moments, and that's the mantra I say to myself. The child who needs your love the most is going to ask in the most inappropriate ways. And then during those moments of, you know, that we think that they're testing us, I actually do the opposite. I'll try to then go back to the level and connect with them. And then usually, like, I have a child in my classroom that he's really emotional, like he does need a lot of support. And usually when he's throwing things around, I hold him and I said, I can give you a hug. Do you need a hug? And I can see his whole body just relaxing into my arms. Like, that's exactly what he needed. So,
It's funny that you say that too, because my own son, he's like doing this thing where he's like repetitive noises all the time. And both my husband and I were getting so annoyed, and we're just like, would you just stop the noise? And then the other day in the car, he was doing it again. And I said, I turned around to him, I said, Harvey, what is it that you need right now? Like, can you tell me what is it that you need? And, he's almost 5. So he was like, whispering to me, and he's like, Mommy, I need you to tell me that you love me. And so I turned around and I said to him, I really love you, Harvey. And he's, thank you. and he stopped the noises. And I was like, oh, like this light
That's all
bulb
I
moment.
needed.
Like it was really like it was connected, like from, when we've done professional development with you at my own service, I was like trying to think back, and I was thinking it's connection seeking. He's,
Yes.
and changing that language from attention seeking to a
Yes.
connection seeking. And it
Yes.
just was like such a light bulb moment that he just needed, a little bit of confirmation that I do love him. I do have time for him. Yeah,
Yeah.
we were driving at the time, but yeah, it was
Because they need that reassurance. Even the children in our classroom, they need to feel loved somehow. And I know that I always talk about that in my workshops. I'm not saying that you're going to love your children the same way you love your children, your own children, but what I'm saying is that they need to feel loved. They need to feel cared for. You're not going to learn from someone that you don't respect, that you don't care about. So they're not going to follow the rules if they don't connect with you. They're not going to follow the expectations of the class, I like to say. We have our class agreement, and for us to all live happily here, we need to follow this agreement. And then they're not going to do that if you're not connecting with them. If when they arrive in the morning, you're not going down to the level and give them a good morning, offer a high five, a hug. Uh, they're not going to do that, because if you're a stranger, they're just going to ignore whatever request.
And like, yeah, I've had educators that are like, oh, I just can't handle them. I don't know what else to do. And I remind them, like, you're the adult in the situation. You're the one that needs to find the solution. So,
Yes.
let's brainstorm together. Let's, take them out of the room, have a chat about it, and think, what professional development do they need?
Mhm.
How are we going to tackle this together? And we have like a lot of, you know, strong boy personalities come through, and that's why we decided to do the professional development with you this year, and it completely changed everyone's perspective on how to talk to children and how to change the narrative. And hearing it from someone with experience, and some of the examples that you gave, and they were like, and it is, when we look at it, there was a little bit of a pattern, and it was the 4 and 5 day children that they do spend more time with you than their own families.
They're
And
probably also exhausted. And I think
exhausted.
that sometimes it too is actually the expectations we have on children. Even as parents and as children, like, we know ourselves, sometimes by the end of the week, we're absolutely exhausted. We struggle to regulate ourselves, to expect some of our children to do some of the things we're expecting is sometimes just too much.
Yes.
And
Met
that's
their quota.
Yeah, they've met their quota, and trying to remember that as well. Like, I was always the one that sort of, everyone would sort of come to me and say, I'm really struggling with this child. And I'm going, well, think outside the child, because the child's generally not the problem. There's something going on, what are you expecting of them? Or, even coming down to the environment. If a child's in an environment that's overstimulating and things like that, bringing them, like, just considering all of those things. There's so much more. Like, obviously there's the connection and things like that, but changing the narratives also, it's not just the child, but the environment. What are you expecting of them and things like that, and changing that mindset as well.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that we also discussed, like in the workshop, about the environment. What is the environment telling them? If it's all messy, if the position of the furniture is telling them there's plenty of space for them to run, they're going to run, because they need the environment to be the third teacher to tell them what they need to do. If they are throwing things on the floor and you're leaving on the floor to just pack away, when it's pack away time, then they're going to chuck everything on the floor, because that's how everything else is. So I feel like definitely the environment, the routine, is there consistency? Do they know what to expect? Or do you have morning tea sometimes at 9, sometimes at 11? You know what I mean? So they need to know what's happening. With younger children, sometimes they're crying or they're a bit upset because they need a nappy change, as simple as that. Or they need to eat something. They need to have their milk. They need to have water. They don't know yet how to read their bodies and be like, oh, actually, my tummy's rumbling, I'm hungry, or I'm thirsty. They might just cry, some children. But also we have the other type of children, where it's like the ones that are really quiet. They don't communicate anything at all. those actually are the ones that worry me the most,
Mm.
because they're not actually externalizing what they're feeling, and that's a bit hard to tackle because they're not letting you know. For me, the loudest ones are the easiest ones to deal with, because they are telling you, I need you, look at me, like Javi said, tell me you love me. Because maybe for a minute when you were driving and not paying attention to him, he was not feeling loved, you know what I mean?
It could
And
have been
that's
a build up of the morning,
yes,
even.
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
it's,
Yeah.
the mornings are so busy and rushed, and
And coming back from school as well, when everybody's so busy and they didn't have that time, they didn't have a cuddle from the teacher, or
But
whatever it
you're
is.
driving in traffic and you might stop talking or whatever. Like there's
Yeah.
so many variables to everything in life that it's hard to sometimes stop and actually think, like break all of those things down and find out what is actually it
going
can
on.
be. Yeah, because there's just so many variables to it.
And of course, like we do have children that are on the spectrum, they have other needs, and of course we need to be aware of it. But once you do have all those, you have tried all those other strategies, and you can see there is not much improvement in that way, or there is a little bit of improvement and they need a little bit more, then it can actually, talk to the parents, get them assessed, and see if there is extra support they can get. But most of the strategies that we talk, like that I usually talk about in my workshops, I use with children with in the spectrum, with children, with ADHD and everything, and any other children that are having, some expressing differently, I would say. And it works. It works no matter what, because it's slowing down connecting with them, giving them simple directions, like first, then any child can respond to that.
Yeah.
But you have to have the consistency of that approach. And I feel like that's what is also not helping educators right now, because sometimes, like, childcare centers will send one educator for training for behavior guidance, and then the other 10 haven't been. So then, then there'll be that educator will be really overwhelmed, because then everybody will be relying on that educator, like, oh, they listen to you, can I send them to your class, or can I? And that's not how it should be. It should be a whole thing, like the same thing
I
we
think
did.
in-house.
It needs to be
It
in-house
needs to
training
be
for
in-house.
everybody,
Yeah.
and do a refresher. I think, like, I used to do refreshers as a director with my team. Every month in a staff meeting, I would take 10 minutes on my staff meeting and just go through the things, like saying, like things that I witness about their approach, the way they were talking to children, or whatever. I'll just bring that up in the staff meeting, and then do a big, behavior guidance workshop refresher, like 6 months, or once a year at least. But because the staff change, there's a staff change there, everything the group of children will change, and then we need to have the same approach. There has to be consistency.
And sometimes if you're not, like there are those that are comfortable with dealing with challenging behaviors, and then there's some that aren't, and some just don't really want to. They
Yeah.
shouldn't even be in early childhood. But sometimes they sort of forget because they
Yeah.
aren't the one. Like you're always going to have those that are more dominant, or not necessarily dominant, but more confident in
Yeah.
dealing with challenging behaviors. They, have that real warmth to them and the patience. And then there's those that definitely don't. And,
And I
a
think it's
good
definitely
team
the lack
is,
of knowledge.
it is a lack of
Sometimes
knowledge.
it's like, because you go to, like, I decided to create my own training for my staff, and that's how my business started. Because I used to go to some trainings and I could see some workshops that I couldn't connect. And for me, it was really, really too much about the theory, and there wasn't many practical strategies, and it was really naive, and it was usually delivered by, say, psychologists or someone that would see children on one-on-one basis. They wouldn't be running a classroom. So I thought, no, we need to have people doing this that are actually running classrooms, that they know how it is having to deal with 22 children, sometimes 30. We have kindy classrooms with 40 kids. So how do you do that? Like, how do you manage that? How can you manage? It shouldn't be chaotic if you have the strategies going on
Consistently
and consistent
with everybody.
Yeah, and it's funny because when educators come to me and they just look exhausted because they're having these challenging behaviors, I love like to flip on them as well and be like, this is a really exciting time for your learning development, because you're going to learn more from this child than probably what you learned in your Cert 3.
Yes.
Because, you know, this child's going to teach you so much more patience, and it's a real pivotal part in your
Career.
in your professional growth. Because I know, looking back, the most challenging children taught me so much more than I probably even taught them.
Yeah.
Because it's just then you've got all these new tools and approaches, and if you really research it and learn, then like you'll have this you know, amazing child that you're working with, but it will also help you for years and years to come.
So true.
Yeah.
And I think that those experiences, it teaches you how to listen to the children more, you know, how to truly listen to them.
Yes.
Because even though I deliver workshops about it, like I'm not 100% like this all the time. There are days that I'm more dedicated, I would say. There are days that I don't feel like it, like I just don't feel like dealing with those behaviors, you know, on the day. And then there was this day, like with this child, that he is really emotional, like he needs that one-on-one support a lot. And then one day I was with, like, he would walk around the playground and then break a bamboo stick and then like wave it around, and he would get like tables and then throw it around, and then I'll be around him saying, sticks are not for hitting. Uh, Tables are not for throwing. If you want to throw it, throw a ball. And, you know, saying all these things. And he's like, just give me a break. He said, you just go around me saying, no, 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 no. And that made me stop and think, true, like I've been following him, just watching what he was going to do next,
And
and just telling him no, 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 instead of saying, here we go, let's do this.
And not just that, like if you really observed and listened to his body language is telling you that he needs big movement.
Yes, yeah.
So like listening isn't just listening to what they're saying,
Yeah.
but it's like actively listening, observing what they're doing and going, hang on a minute, this child needs some, you know, really big gross motor movement to get out whatever energy it is happening there.
And it is like sometimes it's just like when he said that, it's like I came back. And I'm like, Danny, focus. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And then I was able to use those strategies again, and you know, like, and support him how he needed. And then we had a wonderful day. And I know he's not really cuddly usually. And then at the end of that day, because it was a really hard morning, and then at the end of the day, his dad came to pick him up, and he came running to me to give me a hug, which he never did. And I was like, okay, win. Like, you know, even though it was a hard morning after that, like we managed to like
you're making progress.
Yes, you can see the efforts, but that's just gonna happen with training and knowledge. Like I say that to my educators, look at my Facebook page. Like when I scroll through Facebook, all I have is like early childhood groups, you know, about everything about, you know, children's development. I love that stuff. Like my podcast I listen to is always about this stuff. So I'm always like learning and trying to, because I feel like this is the basic, like for you to be a teacher.
Then you can just take it and keep going with it, and then you get to teach the more junior educators. And like I have you know, a lot of senior educators, and I think put the time and effort into your junior educators, because it's going to make your life so much easier.
I used to love training the new ones.
And
like you could mold them the way you
and put that time into the professional development, having those, you know, those meaningful conversations with children to connect. And
they're screaming out for it though. Like you ask any educator, what would you like professional development on? 9 out of 10 times they want it on behavior management.
Because it's going to make their day run smoother. And then like they feel more productive when they, you know, feel like that they're connecting with all their children.
It's so exhausting. And all the other children end up missing out on your, you know, the connection and stuff from you, because you're exhausted from dealing with like that one or two children. When all they really want is connection. And if you once you've got that and you understand what it is they're wanting, like everybody gets the best out of everything.
And then you learn how to change the narrative, and you learn how to stop looking for the bad things they're doing, and then you start looking for the positive things that they are doing. And then when you're praising them, you're acknowledging them, they realize, oh, So I don't have to behave that way
Mm.
to get her attention. She's actually noticing the good things I'm
Yeah.
doing. And everything changes.
Yeah, it's funny because when you came in and did the PD with us as well, like one of the things I remember that you said was, like using the word, oh, you're such a drama queen.
Yes.
And the next day, there's a baby that will like the educator's like, oh, such a drama queen, and they were like, oh no, like they called themselves saying it, and
Yeah.
and even from like they're only babies, they hear you, they're listening, they're taking and absorbing what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah, but what examples can you give instead of using drama queen? Like, what would you
Yes.
say? Like,
Yeah. Well, I would say she's really communicating her emotions today, like
yeah.
not to label those behaviors, like not to label children, because I feel like even when you say to yourself, like I know that I had stuff in the past that would say, oh, I'm so anxious, and then they would behave like with that anxiety because it them denominated themselves as anxious, so that's how they're going to be. And with children is the same, like if you don't, and it was calling them a drama queen, that's how they're going to be,
Mm,
a drama queen. Even though they're a baby, they don't understand that, but they'll grow older
mm.
because
And you
it will
see it like
be.
because they move through the rooms,
Yes.
and then like they hear that constantly,
Yeah.
and then yeah, at the end when it gets to that kindergarten age, you're like, oh wow,
Yeah.
like
They're probably turning
they're
around and
very
go, I'm a drama
sassy.
queen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
And,
whatever.
and then if you think about it, like, oh, she's so stubborn.
yeah.
Like that's not really, like, you shouldn't be calling them that way. It's just like she's got a strong personality. Like
Mm,
she's a leader or whatever. Like it's great. I feel like we just want to put children in boxes and then we get frustrated because they're not behaving the way we want them to behave. But they are their own selves. Like they are their own little people and they will be the way they are. And if we just accept that they are that way, make our lives easier. Like you cannot judge a fish for its capacity of flying.
Yeah.
mhm,
You know what I mean? So if you always expect a fish to fly, then it's always going to be useless because a fish can't fly.
mm,
But it can swim. It can swim beautifully, and a bird can swim. You
mm,
know what I mean? So it's like I feel like that's what it is with children. It's like we all want them to behave in a certain way, but why can't we change? Why can't we change the way we're teaching
mm,
in the classroom to actually meet everyone's needs?
And
Uh,
building on their strengths.
Yeah.
Like I think,
yes,
yeah, I think building on their strengths is so important because when you look at it and if they've got a natural passion for something and they love doing something, then like build on that. Like
yeah,
why, squashing it's not helping because then you will get behaviors. And it is
yeah.
about changing the environment to suit the child, not the other way around.
Exactly, like that child, especially with the children that have more challenging behaviors for you. Like this child, for example, that's my example. He always loved gems, minerals, and
Mm,
things like that. And I remember I went to the museum in Brisbane and I saw some. So I took photos. And when I came back on Monday, I printed all the photos and I gave it to him and said, look, I went to Brisbane in the weekend and I thought of you because I know how much you love this. And then he couldn't believe it. It's like, you were in Brisbane and you thought of me?
It's so
You
gorgeous.
know, and then the week after, I went to the $2 shop and I bought some gems and I created a whole corner with all these different things. And then he came and he knew like all the names. Like, this is an emerald, this is a diamond, this is this.
mm.
So then I got him to do a show and
Diamonds,
tell.
jeez.
Yeah.
I'm going to your India.
But they're all the plastic ones. But then he was like, he came into the show and tell after. I'm like, you know
Yeah.
so much. Can you go and teach your friends? So it became a whole thing where, like, even the parents were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. Seriously? Like,
Yeah.
you were in Brisbane and you thought of him? Because, like you were saying, like, for me, those children are the ones that actually get my attention the most because I want to focus on that. Like I want to show them, I want to develop their passion for learning, and I want them to understand that that's a safe place for them to be. And I don't want them to come to my classroom and feel scared that they're going to be sent to the principal's office
Mm.
or to a different classroom, or we're gonna, I have heard that in the past. Also, you're behaving like a baby, I might have to send you to the baby's room,
Mm.
or like this is not where what my classroom is about. So I want them to feel seen and for the parents also to see that it's not because I'm talking about his challenging behaviors with you, I'm talking about the strategies that I don't like your child. I love your child. Like, I care for him so much,
Mm.
but I just need to discuss these things with you because I need us to work together so we can support him to thrive.
And I think that
Otherwise-
example of if you're, acting like a baby, we're going to send you to the baby's room,
Yeah.
is a fine example of the educator is not coping.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they need to reflect on themselves.
and learn to
think,
regulate.
hang on a second, I'm not regulating, I'm getting frustrated. And that's when they need to say to the educator beside them, I need a break.
Yeah.
Can you please just, support me in this
Yes.
this situation?
Because
Not
really
being scared of it.
there are very, very minimal opportunities where a child should need to be taken out of the classroom for behaviours and put somewhere else.
Yeah.
That is
So
not
what you're
inclusion.
doing is sending the message as an educator that you're not capable to problem solve and find a solution. And it's
And
kind
for
of
the child, it's like, if you behave that way, you're not cared for, you're not loved.
Yeah.
and
you
they're
know,
only going to
it's those
retaliate.
excluding them.
They're going to retaliate and
Yeah.
not. It actually is going to be detrimental to your relationship and take a really long time to build on.
Yes.
And one of my friends said it's like saying, like, if you're the mum and you're like, oh, when your dad gets home, you're going to be in so much trouble. Well, as the mum, you've just given all your power to the dad.
Yeah.
So it's like, no, you need to be in the moment. You need to problem solve in the moment.
But then it
self-regulate.
Yeah.
But then it also makes the dad look like the big bad wolf.
Yeah.
I used to get that all the time because I was often the one dealing with the challenging behaviours
Yeah.
because, that was something that I was quite good at.
Yeah.
But it would be like, all right, well, I'm going to go and get Miss Katie, or I'm going to do this. And it's like, hang on a minute, because
they're painting a picture that Miss Katie's like.
and the real authority. And it's like, well, that's not the picture that you should be portraying of me, because that's not the case. And to be honest, like, often it was dealt with, challenging behaviors were dealt with love and patience and, but to actually turn around and say, well, I'm going to go and get Miss Katie then, that, that doesn't paint a good picture on me.
No.
And it's,
And I remember that back at my previous center that I was there for 5 years, the teachers would say, oh, I'm going to go, do you want to go to Miss Denny's office then? But because I always had a good
They'll be like,
relationship with the
yes.
kids, they're like, yeah, sure. They would come to my office. I had cheese and crackers. So they were like, yeah, I love it. So I would always say, like, if I heard them saying it, I would say the same. I said, look, Miss Denny can happily take you for a walk, and then we'll come back soon. And then I would take them, like, for a walk in the yard. We have a conversation and then bring it back, the child, and be like, this cannot be something that you just do it all the time when you feel overwhelmed. Like, you can call me and I'll come here to the classroom and support you throughout, but please don't threaten them. Just send them to the office. Unless, like you say, you're putting all the children to sleep and that child's being really disruptive and not letting the other one sleep, then I'm happy to take them to the office and we can do something
That's what I'm saying.
together.
There's minimal
times,
but
not
that should happen
all the time. Like,
And
that's
you're trying
Not as a
to
punishment.
like do it like it's like coming from a fear base.
Yes.
And then a child
Like a
fearing.
threat.
Yeah.
Like, and that's not good for trying to develop their regulation.
No.
But again, that is just visible to educators if they have the training. Like, you cannot expect them to know all of this. They don't learn these strategies, they don't learn these concepts in Cert 3, in diplomas, and even in their bachelor. You don't learn that. So they need to do professional development. It has to be a key thing. It has to be just as important as it is to do the child protection training, as it is to do the first aid. Like, for
Because
me,
every year they get new children.
They do.
So new challenges.
Yeah.
It is
and
really
once they learn the basics of things, then it's going to be easier for them to understand. But if they don't know, like, they come just with their own baggage, their own childhood experiences, and maybe in their own home they were sent to the other room, and they think that's how they learn, and they're not going to know better if you don't provide them the opportunities for them to learn better.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Collaborative Approach in Education. Until next time, keep inspiring young minds. Please follow us, like and share on Facebook and Instagram. And if there are any topics that you would like to discuss, please let us know in the comments below.